Okay, we are 23 practices into it, 7 to go. Well, one of those includes an exhibition game, so really 6 practices and an exhibition game before we play our real first game. So we're close to having everything put together in terms of the stuff that we have in. We're not close at all to figuring out, who's getting all the minutes, those kind of things. It's very tight on our basketball team, and I would expect that it will be long into the season trying to figure out, who's going to compete for those minutes, because there's a lot we need to figure out. There's a lot of ways we can play. We can play big, we can play small. A lot of different positions players can play, and so there's a lot for our coaching staff to figure out for sure, and we're nowhere near that. But the practices have gone well. We scrimmaged at Iowa last Saturday, learned a lot about ourselves there. Got to take care of the ball. That's probably our biggest issue right now, are just turnovers. But we're working on that, and the players know it, and so that's been a point of emphasis for us. But the kids are working hard, doing everything we ask them to do, which is mostly, as a coach, that's what you can ask of them.
Scott, do you feel like this team, when you just mentioned you got a lot of different ways you can play, is the versatility one of the things that kind of excites you about the possibilities for this group?
Yeah, because there's a lot we can do defensively with it, in terms of how we guard, the switching, the pressure. I think it's compared to most teams that I've coached, it's much harder to score around the basket on us. We block more shots, and just more athletic, and so the versatility, I think, even more so on the defensive end, is going to help us.
Obviously, it's your first year here at SIU, so for the fans out there that are just seeing you as a first-year head coach, I guess kind of talk a little bit about your coaching style headed into your first season with the Salukis.
It's not much of a style. We're pretty simple. We're motion offense and man-to-man defense, probably 99% of the time. I mean, that's what they're going to see. We certainly play at a faster pace than most people do. Last year we averaged 86 points a game. So, we are going to play faster. It puts a little more pressure on your defense when you do that. There's more points given up when you play faster, and so we're less concerned about how many points we're giving up. And the concern we have on both ends are what we call PPP, which is points per possession. Are we scoring over 1 point per possession, and are we holding them under 1 point per possession? And if we do that, we're going to win.
Talking about that offense, just I wonder, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, Scott, but if you're going to be scoring that way and you're in a league that focuses mainly on defense, does that potentially, do you feel confident that you might be able to kind of break the system a little bit on the league?
I don't know. I'm not so concerned with that. I think, one, we have 5 new coaches, and so some of that stuff might change. I know some of the coaches, and I know they're going to play at a faster clip just like we will. Now, we just scrimmaged Iowa, and we're probably not going to play too many teams that play much faster than they do, and so there were a lot of possessions in that game. Most of the games that we're involved in are somewhere around 70. Teams that would consider themselves defensive teams are going to try to keep it in the 50s and 60s. And so, a lot of teams will say, look how many points we gave up. But I'm going to go back to the real question is, what are the points per possession? Because there's a lot of teams that say they're good defensively because they're not giving up a lot of points, but it's because they play slow offensively. They control the pace of the game with their offense. And so just go back to there are a million different ways to do it, but every coach has got to figure out what's the best way for us to score a very high number of points per possession offensively and hold teams under that defensively. And I like to play fast because, one, I think it helps us recruit players that want to play and want to score, and 2, I know the fans like to see it. And there's nothing wrong with the fans enjoying the game and it not being such a grinder, to come to every game. And so, I've liked that brand of basketball, but that still doesn't mean you can't be a great defensive team just because you play fast. I think the natural way for most coaches to think is you can't be a great defensive team and play fast, and I disagree with that.
How important is it? I guess it's important in every system you play, but particularly when you're playing quick, how important is it to be able to have guards that can kind of push the other team out and make them maybe start an offense a few feet further out and be able to dictate to them?
Whatever defensive system you have, it doesn't necessarily have to. The main thing about running, like if you want to play fast, the best way to play fast is to get stops. Now, so as a coach, some coaches rely on zone for that. Everybody has a system that they think will help them the best defensively. And it could be that you're pressuring, it could be that you're really packing in. But the key, if you want to run, is to play fast, is to get stops. And then you can play fast off the rebounds. But if you're always giving up buckets, it's hard to play fast. It just is hard when you're throwing the ball. You got to step out of bounds every time, throw it in. Now, we still try to, but the best way to play at a good clip is to get stops. And every team has to figure that out. You don't necessarily have to pressure to be that way, but your defense has to be good in order to play quickly. Now, just because I say we're going to play fast doesn't mean we just take crazy shots. I mean, last year we led the country in field goal percentage, playing fast. And so you got to take care of the ball and you got to take good shots. But I think we're in the top 25 in our length of possession. Our length of possession is very quick. We're going to take good, quick shots.
Coach, you rewind a couple months ago, right? You get the job, you had to go and get all these new players. They all learn their names, learning your system. How much further do you have to go to seeing where this team is where you want it to be?
Oh, I think it'll be all year. And that's what I was telling them after we scrimmage Iowa. They started 5 guys against us that had been in the system at least 1 year, and a lot of them 2 or 3 years. Every guy we started in that game had not been with me more than 6 months. And so I was very good, but Iowa I don't think will get as good as the year goes along as where we are now to where we'll be at the end of the year. I think is going to be a huge improvement because we're going to continually get better. I think particularly offensively. I like, defensively I think we're going to be pretty good, but I think offensively it should get better as the year goes.
How do you feel about your perimeter shooting?
Well, I wasn't high on it in terms of all when I started to look at our team and then you look at last year's stats. But, the key is, do you have the right players taking the right shots? And if you look at our practice stats, right now we're over 40% from three. If we're going to shoot 40% from three, I'm happy. And, I don't think we have a bunch of snipers out there, but if you just have the right players taking the right shots, you can be a great three-point shooting team, even though you just haven't stacked a team with a bunch of great shooters.
This is pretty much a whole new team from what we've seen last year. So I guess just talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of coming in and pretty much building up a new program here at SIU.
Well, I don't know if there are many advantages other than there's some excitement for everybody in terms of the change and maybe an opportunity to do some things that maybe they didn't get to do with the previous staff they were with. I mean, that for players leaving one program to come to another, that's part of what they're looking for is something different. But everybody's getting something different here. And so I don't think there are huge advantages to that, for sure. What was the other part of that question?
Just if there's any just advantages or disadvantages to your first year.
Oh, I think there's a lot of disadvantages, but one of them that I would be concerned about is just camaraderie with a bunch of new guys, and even with our staff. Not only our staff amongst our staff, but our staff with our players, and then our players with our players. And all that has gone incredibly well. Like, I've been super pleased with that. And that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about is just how close our team has been and how much they root for each other. And even though they're all competing for spots, I think they're all excited about the year.
Just how challenging is your non-conference schedule when you look at it?
I mean, I always think they're challenging. I don't, I don't spend a lot. Every game I look at, I never overlook anybody. I don't care who it is. When I watch them, my thought process is I'm not sure we can beat these guys. And so I think that helps me in terms of getting ready for teams and not overlooking teams and not letting our players overlook it. But, I mean, it's easy to point out that we go to Oklahoma State and we go to Florida, in games like that. But I think playing home against NDSU, who's had a good program, Southern Indiana, had just gone Division I, and I know how that is, but they're starting to build their program, and so I don't overlook anybody. I wouldn't treat Florida any different than I would Southern Indiana or whatever. I think it's very challenging, and I think by the time we get to league play, we should be ready to go.
Where do you think this team has the potential to be once you get to league play in terms of rotations, minutes, or whatever? How important is it going to be to at least get part of the way towards kind of figuring out the puzzle you talked about?
Well, I think that's important for players to kind of know what to expect game to game. Like, I got a pretty good idea. I'm coming off the bench. I'm going to play this many minutes. But it's going to be a little more difficult with this team for us to figure out. And so I'm not exactly sure how that'll play, but the expectation for our team, we only have one goal here, and I'd be surprised if anybody else in our league had the same goal, and that's to win the league. And I mean, for me, there's no other reason to show up and play if that's not going to be the goal. I'm not, to me, second place is no good. I'm not interested in that, and I don't want to coach anybody that's interested in that.
What appealed to you to participate in the Field of 68 event on November 4th, where you play Charleston?
So say it again.
What appealed to you to be part of the showcase event on November 4th?
We had initially signed up for when I was at Wright State, and it's a good mid-major. Like, we knew we would play somebody good mid-major. I think personally for me, because I coached in South Dakota, so that's a lot of fun for me. Plus, I know that the venue we're playing in, I know the players will like that. They run a first-class event there, and so I think they're going to enjoy that too. So to me, there's a lot of pluses for it.
Coach, you said you didn't know your starting five yet. Is that a good problem to have right now? I know you have a lot.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. I think the players worry about it more, and I think you've heard it said before, and it's true. And I'm not a cliche guy, but the most important thing is, are you on the floor at the end of the game? Not do you run out there. If the most important thing is for you to have your name called and have all that flashy stuff, and not be on the floor at the end of the game, that's when you want to be on there. Like, are you going to count on me? I think people get caught up in that. If it were up to me, I'd get rid of all the pregame stuff, and as soon as the horn went off, we put 5 out there and we play. But I get, like, there has to be the entertainment value. I'm trying to win basketball games, and so I don't want our players getting so caught up in that stuff, and because for us, normally I get to a starting lineup and I like to keep it if I can, if players will continue to earn it. And then that way people know what to expect. But I think with this team it's going to be a little more difficult to figure that out. And we're still, like, every day it could change for us right now.
How is your freshman acclimated to the college speed and just the game?
Good. We have three true freshmen, one redshirt freshman. Drew, obviously, hadn't been at Texas Tech, has a little better feel. But Jaheim and Rollins in particular, Isaac has been out, almost the whole fall with a shoulder. But Jaheim and Rollins have done a good job. Rollins is, Jaheim is probably a center. Rollins can probably play both positions. But they're competing. They're both competing for time just like everybody else.